This is SoundStage founder Doug Schneider. You're listening to the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast, your semi-regular deep dive into news, facts, opinions, and anecdotes about everything that really matters in the world of high-performance audio. Hosts Brent Butterworth and Dennis Berger have more than 5 decades worth of audio product testing experience, and a few hours of podcasting experience as well. Now, here's Brent and Dennis.
Hey everyone, it's Dennis Berger, editor of SoundStage Access.
And this is Brent Butterworth, editor of SoundStage Solo.
And we both write for the SoundStage Network, which is a collection of 9 microsites that cover all sorts of topics in audio, from connected audio to headphones and everything in between.
But we're here today to talk about the topics that matter to us, and we hope to you.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. I think we got 3 pretty cool topics this week. I would like to start off with a story from strata-gee. It's called Data Suggests Inflation-Impacted Consumers Are Trading Down. It's basically a story about how, given inflation, given everything that's going on, people are trending toward buying higher value products instead of higher price products. And that includes high-income consumers. So we're going to talk about how that might have some intersection with the audio domain. What do you want to talk about this week, Brent?
I would like to talk about, there's a piece over on Stereophile.com that's talking about the fact that this is Stereophile's 60th anniversary. And I actually go back a long way with Stereophile. I started reading it in 91, and it was kind of a lot of the inspiration for my career. And I'd like to kind of go back and talk about that, but also talk about how things have changed so much since then in the press. Everything is so different, and not just because of, the internet and YouTube and things like that. Just everything, so many things about the press have changed, and a lot of it is because of Stereophile, I think. And what's next? What's after that?
Well, we have just had the EISA Best Products of 2022-2023 announced. SoundStage has coverage of that. Like to dig into what the EISA Awards are, how they're picked, what they mean, and I think you and I ought to maybe pick out a couple of our favorite products. You and I are not involved in the voting for this, but I thought
they didn't ask us.
No, they didn't ask us.
Therefore, all the picks are wrong.
Absolutely correct. But yeah, I thought that'd be a cool conversation. Since we haven't had any audio shows in a while, to just sort of dig through these awards and go, hey, here's something I think is really cool and I think worthy of attention. So. But first, before we get to that, let's talk about this story from Ted Green. We've talked about Ted before. He runs a website called strata-gee, which is strata-gee.com. Ted is a legend in the industry. Many people might know him from Onkyo. He does a lot of business-related reporting, and I would say he is probably one of the only actual journalists working in our field. He does a lot of really, really, really good business-related reporting. But he has a write-up about new data that seems to suggest that high-income consumers are trading down to high-value products. And the source of this comes from Walmart, which I think everybody was expecting to have a really awful second quarter. Even Walmart expected to have a really awful second quarter. And it's not like profits were super high, but they had a much, much better second quarter than expected. They did turn a profit, and they had good revenue. And some analysis suggests that more than anything else, it was an uptick in high income consumers that normally would not shop at Walmart, who are now shopping at Walmart as a result of the downturn in the economy and the inflation that we're experiencing.
So what do they do? What does Walmart define as a high-end consumer?
Oh, that's a good question.
That was a leading question. I think they defined it as 100,000 plus household income.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Very different from what I think the high-end audio industry would consider a high-end consumer.
Yeah, I don't think 100,000 a year would count as high income in anywhere except for maybe Alabama, where I live.
That's household income. Yeah, that's household income.
Yeah.
Too. That's not like your income.
Right.
So, family of four, $100,000 is not much money.
No.
But Walmart considers that high end. But I'm kind of wondering though, does this indicate if what the high end audio industry considers high end consumers, which I don't know what that is, but I would just say probably household income of at least double that.
Oh, at least. Yeah.
200, 300,000 a year probably, because so much of the focus, look, you can always get really good audio products for the prices that average people can afford. However, as we've discussed many times, the focus of this industry now is on these super, super, super high-end products that you're talking about the top, 1% or even 0.1% can afford.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a graph in here from Chicago Booth Review that basically shows buying trends for all number of categories from like 2006 all the way through 2017. And it's broken down by health and beauty, alcoholic beverages, dry goods, non-food, general merchandise, fresh food, meat, frozen food, all sorts of topics. And this shows that it's a pretty consistent trend in every economic downturn. There's a shift toward everyone moving toward more high value products. And I thought that was kind of interesting. But interestingly enough, amplifiers and speakers are not a category in this. So
this is an outrage.
Yeah. There's there's one thing.
These people should be in jail.
Lock them up. There's interestingly though, throughout the course of this, there's a lot of discussion in this reporting. There's a lot of conflation between high price and high quality and low price and low quality.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the places where we sort of have to divorce this discussion from audio if we're going to consider audio as part of this trend. Because, I think if anything, over the past few years, it's been proven that there's not a huge correlation anymore between price and quality in audio. Some of the best products that I've heard in recent years have been super affordable. I mean, hell, I cover nothing but high value audio. So I did take issue with that conflation with, low price equals low quality, high price equals high quality. But I'm wondering how much of this could be, I wonder how much correlation there is here between these trends. One thing to consider is, in all of these products that they're talking about, these are things that people need every week or every month or something like that. Let's face it, right now in this economic downturn, you don't need to buy a new amplifier every month. You don't need new speakers every month. I mean,
every few months.
Maybe once a quarter, upgrade your amp. But, but I think anybody maybe right now who is getting into audio, who is pushed in the direction of going for more high value product as a result, I think it's going to be interesting maybe what they discover. Just give you one example. A couple of months ago, I reviewed this Marantz Model 40N integrated amplifier. Really amazing piece. When I unboxed the thing, I looked at it and thought, oh crap, I've made a mistake. Like I thought this thing was like $2,500, but this is like obviously like a $5,000 amp, and then that was before listening to it. That was just the build quality and the connections and everything like that. And no, it's $2,500. And then I shipped it to Doug for him to do photography and to get it to Diego for measurements. And Doug emailed me saying, oh man, I thought you had screwed up. Like I'm looking at this thing thinking this has got to be a $20,000 amplifier. And I looked up the price and it's $2,500. And so that'll tell you, I mean, we've said for a while that performance, not a big difference, but one of the big things you get when you upgrade to higher priced products is better build quality, better fit and finish, things like that, better design. I mean, I think, heck, the Model 40N is proving even that's not true anymore. So I think if anybody is driven to the higher value product right now because of this economic downturn, what they're going to find is they're getting a lot more for their money than they thought they would probably.
Yeah, and you spend more, and it gets more into like a luxury goods sort of thing. And, where you're not necessarily getting better it's like a luxury car. At some point, extreme sports cars aside, right? Like a luxury sedan, right? You're not really getting better performance. You're just getting, maybe it looks nicer, maybe the interior is a little bit nicer, maybe it's got some super cool feature that somebody else doesn't have, maybe it's got a Burmester sound system or who knows what, but it doesn't really have better performance above a certain point.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of years ago at a car show, my dad and I backed our vet in, and a guy with a Ferrari F12 Berlinetta pulled in right next to us. And my dad and I were like, oh, crap, nobody's going to look at our vet with a Ferrari parked next to us. But it gave me a chance to really look at the F12 Berlinetta and compare, because if you look at they're very similar looking cars. We have a C7 Corvette. I mean, at a glance, you would think the F12 Berlinetta is a Corvette, but really one of the biggest differences I noticed was in the seats. Like, you could tell the seats in the Ferrari were like hand stitched, right? Yeah. The stitching was just much better quality. The dashboard was like almost looked handcrafted, and look, there's value in stuff like that. Yeah. No doubt about it. But yeah, I think, to your point, I think that's a lot of what you're getting in audio, maybe hand-wired circuit boards or things like that, which,
Yeah, except in cars, that has a V12 engine, I assume, right? So in cars, more cylinders is perceived as better, whereas in audio, in like amplifiers, less is perceived often as better. Simpler is better.
That's a really good point.
I'm just saying. I'm just making a stupid point, but it's kind of interesting how the perceptions of people, and of course, a V12 doesn't necessarily perform any better than a V8. I would assume. I don't know anything about cars, but
I don't think it has any more displacement. Oh well, I think maybe it's got like a tenth of a liter more displacement, something like that.
Okay, but still, it's not. Minor. There's no. I mean, there are inherent advantages to different cylinder. But once you get up to 8, you got plenty to work with. Yeah, and also, with audio, it's this whole idea that simpler is better, and amps that have like 3 watts are better than amps that have 300 is similarly just faddish. It's just it's sort of a reverse numbers game. But these things happen.
So what do you think this means for headphones, if you had to speculate?
I think it means nothing for headphones. I think headphones, because headphones are relatively cheap, and the headphone market is very much, audio people tend to buy stuff and then not buy something new. And they just tend to have one system, maybe 2. Whereas headphone enthusiasts have a ton of headphones, and they're always buying new headphones. So it's almost like collecting, as opposed to what audio, more mainstream audio people do. It's like collecting, guitars or something. You never have enough.
Or records.
Yeah. And so the headphone crowd, I think, will not be, obviously headphone sales are going to be affected by overall economic trends, but I don't think the mix of high-end to low-end headphones is going to matter to these people, because they have, pretty good disposable income, and they can afford to spend $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever the headphone costs, and it's not a big deal to them, as opposed to, some of these amplifiers in high-end audio now are $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Likewise, the speakers, likewise the preamp, likewise the turntables, and that's a much bigger expense. And then you got a bunch of stuff cluttering up your house. You could have 10, 20 sets of headphones, and it's still not going to clutter up your house unless you just leave them flopping all over the place, as I do.
Guilty. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I think we've kind of said all we have to say about this one. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I'm eager for a musical interlude.
Let's take a musical interlude, and we'll be back in just a minute.
And we're back. This is the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast. I'm Brent Butterworth.
And I'm Dennis Berger.
And so for our second segment, we are going to talk about an article that appeared on Stereophile.com that is talking about the 60th anniversary of Stereophile magazine. And it's by John Atkinson, who was the editor for, I don't know how long.
Yeah, he came in the late 80s, right?
Yeah. So he really, and he just became technical editor, 4 years ago or something.
3 or 4,
So
yeah.
we should probably go look all this stuff up before somebody rakes us over the coals, but whatever.
No, we're here to talk about the important stuff, man, not dates.
No, we're not here to get all of our dates right. We're not history teachers. So anyway, so John talks about how the magazine was founded by Gordon Holt, and he talks about why the magazine has had good longevity and stuff like that, and of course, there's not surprisingly for an audio publication, there's a little bit of chest beating, although the chest beating is not real loud here. But I wanted to talk about this because it really brought back some great memories for me. And honestly, Stereophile had a giant effect on my career, even though I never actually worked for them. Almost did. many years ago. I was very close, and I ended up taking a different job. But I think I wrote like 2 articles for him, maybe in partnership with Steve Guttenberg. But so I found out about Stereophile because I was in the hospital way back in '91, I think, and my friend Ken Corman, who was a fellow editor of mine at Video Magazine, brought me some high-end audio journals just kind of as a joke. For reading in the hospital. And so it was Stereophile, Absolute Sound, and Hi-Fi Heretic. And Hi-Fi Heretic is the one that resonated the most with me because he was like, hey man, he was kind of like us. He was like, hey man, you don't have to go spend a fortune. You can get really good stuff for $500, $600, $1,000, something like that. Right. Mm-hmm. But he didn't last all that. The guy's name was Kent somebody, but he didn't last all that long, sadly. But Stereophile did, and Stereophile, I kind of got in. So if I got in at '91, they were still in a fairly primitive stage, and John Atkinson had just taken over a couple years before, and they were just starting to do measurements, and the influence of John was just starting to be felt, and you could watch that magazine transform. And back then it was digest size. It was like the old Reader's Digest. It was like a little tiny miniature magazine. And I would take them with me on bike tours and things like that to read. And every, they came on the first Saturday of the month because I had a subscription. And every Saturday morning I would go do my gym workout. I would get home, Stereophile would be in the mailbox, and I'd go grab it and take it to my favorite little cheap Chinese restaurant in New York and just sit there for like a couple of hours drinking tea and reading Stereophile. But that's great. I wanted to say that I don't think a lot of people, so I was there through this whole thing. I was in the press during, the whole evolution of this, from their about when they were 28, 29 years old and still kind of a pretty obscure publication, running out of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and when they evolved into what they are. And so back then, I think it's really underappreciated how much Stereophile changed the press, the audio press. Because I would go to press events in New York when I was working for Video Magazine in the early 90s, and it was very regimented. And, all the people's, it was kind of a running joke that they'd be like, okay, any questions? And someone would stand up and go, price and availability. And always, like every time.
Yeah.
And, and it was so, and the most of the people that wrote about it were not really that much into audio or video. They were trade reporters. They might end up working at, I went into there from Spin Magazine. I was not an audio guy or video guy. I became one. But so many of those people really weren't interested in the gear. It was just, that was their gig. And they had worked on all sorts of magazines in New York because that's what you did. And there were a few technical guys. There was there was my old buddy Lance Braithwaite. There was Lynn Thelman. There was Ed Foster, Julian Hirsch, people like that who would do the testing, but they didn't have a whole lot to do with the way the magazines were edited or written. And the reviews would start out with the JVC something or another is a 4-head VCR with these features. And Stereophile really, I think, over the course of, the early 90s started to change that. And I think John really, I think he wanted to enliven it and get people more involved. And part of the way they did that is through much better writing and much more sort of engaging writing by people that were really into the stuff, not by people who were just regurgitating the press release, people who had their own take on this stuff and who cared about it.
Yeah.
And I think John really changed the whole industry because he found this guy named Corey Greenberg, who some of us old schoolers remember. Corey, I don't think has written for anybody for 20 years or something, or 15 years. But, he was he was like the Hunter S. Thompson of audio writing when he came out in the early 90s. And it was and immediately everybody or maybe it was kind of like John Coltrane. John Coltrane, when he started hitting, everybody tried to sound like John Coltrane. Mm-hmm. And so many writers, I think Corey coming out with his really just radically involving and exciting sort of writing about audio made a lot of the Stereophile writers kind of raise their game, made me raise my game. I eventually ended up working with him, made people like Al Griffin, another friend of ours, really kind of tried to hit that level of excitement and engagement and creativity. Yeah. And the fact that John sort of spotted that and encouraged it eventually changed, in my view, the entirety of audio publishing. And I'm going to say, I think audio publishing has drifted back to boring in a lot of ways. And there's not that kind of push. Who's the writer now who you want to emulate? If you're a young person, well, you're not going to emulate a writer. You're going to start a YouTube channel,
right? Exactly. I was about to say.
But that kind of excitement and innovation and just gutsy, risk taking. Because when you take risks like that, you're going to lose advertisers when you get these really super opinionated, charismatic writers in there, or super opinionated YouTube people or whatever. You're going to lose advertisers. And I know for sure that I'm sure Stereophile lost a few because they had Corey and the people just didn't think it was too, it wasn't serious enough. I got complaints like that all the time when I was in editors. I hired Corey and used him for Video Magazine for a while. And I would get complaints from a few people that were like, well, this is not serious, blah, 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 blah. This is taking a cavalier attitude towards the equipment and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you're boring. Shut up.
Yeah.
So,
I'm realizing something.
What?
It's if I'm picking up what you're laying down, you are saying that sort of Stereophile in this era influenced the way you covered this material.
Oh yeah.
And
I
what's
think the way
interesting,
everybody did.
Have I ever told you why I became a writer?
No. Because it paid better than
no. Civil engineering and surveying paid much better.
Oh,
but
okay.
So it was the mid 90s, and I was starting to get into home theater because I think I've mentioned this before. I'm autistic, and I have major sensitivities, and so it's really hard for me to go to a movie theater and enjoy a movie, because if somebody 19 rows behind me rattles their paper, I'm just out of the movie. So for me, getting into home theater was necessity. It wasn't just like I want to be able to watch movies at home. It's like I want to be able to enjoy movies, and I have to control the environment. And so I started getting into home theater, I guess, about a year before DVD came out, and I started reading Home Theater Magazine, interestingly enough. And I was just a fan. And there was one article in particular that made me think, oh man, I want to do this. I want to write about this. And it was an article that you did with Al. And I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was something like Voodoo or Doo-Doo or something like that.
Oh, we reviewed a bunch of so-called voodoo audio products, and some of them worked and some of them didn't, but we had fun with it.
Yeah. And at one point there was like, so the Shack T stone thing that like you put on top of an amp, like you guys put a fortune frog on top of the amp instead of the Shack T stone. Yeah. And it was so, that article, like you guys got it. You got it that like this is all about entertainment. This is all about having fun. These are toys. Yeah. And that made me realize like I want to do this. I want to make people happy for a living, because that article made me so happy. And so in a weird way, I'm just realizing now, had it not been for what they were doing with Stereophile in the early 90s, you might not have been doing what you were doing with home theater in the mid 90s, and I would still be designing bridges and supervising the creation of subdivisions and things like that. So,
there is no question of it. And I very well, I think I probably would have gone from video magazine to whatever magazine, maybe an outdoors magazine or who knows what, because I didn't have a lot of fire in the belly for VCRs. It was, VCRs and TVs and stuff like that. It was fine. It was a gig, but the Stereophile is what really showed me that this could be a really creative and exciting thing. And when you opened, especially back in the old digest size, God, you'd open that thing and it would just crackle with life. It was just so, all the writers were kind of commenting on each other kind of here and there and stuff like that. And it was really exciting to read, and it was a lot of fun, and I just really loved it. But yeah, that is what has been by far the biggest influence on my career. And they're still there 60 years later, 60 years after founding. And all those other audio magazines, I mean, Stereo Review was folded into Sound and Vision, and Sound and Vision still exists 6 times a year or something like that. I don't think you could say it's prospering. Audio magazine's gone. All the home theater magazines are, except for Sound and Vision, are gone. And, High Fidelity's gone. And it's, Stereophile is still there, along with Absolute Sound. Those two are still thriving. And back then they were just seen, I remember that somebody, like people thought it was really weird that a Stereophile person showed up at a press event way back in the early 90s, because they were just seen as this just wackadoodle, far fringe kind of thing. And that's not what, we professional journalists do. So
one of the things I really love about this retrospective on the website, 60 Years of Stereophile, is they show the cover of the first 3 issues, and they're really cool, and they're really artsy, and they're really abstract, and there's no, sort of subheads on it. There's no hype. It's just, it's cool and it's artsy, and it's like, what's that? I want to read that. There's like a chessboard, and instead of chess pieces, it's valves and stuff like that. There's another one that's just like sort of an, abstract deconstruction of, tubes and clips and things like that. And there's no, this amp is going to rock your face off. It's enticing instead of, just sort of like, here's what this issue's about. I don't know. I like that. There's something fun and cheeky about it that I dig, and I wish we had more of that in our industry. So
yeah, and you know what? I just realized something. Stereophile is 6 months younger than me.
Wow.
So we'll see which one of us outlasts the other.
The race is on.
The race
is on. Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not going to go to Stereophile's funeral, so.
Well, we'll see.
Man.
We'll see.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, you want to take a break, get some water, and come back and talk about these awards?
Yeah, we'll see y'all in a few minutes.
All right. Bye. And welcome back to the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast. I'm Dennis Berger.
And I'm Brent Butterworth.
And in our final segment today, we are going to be talking about the EISA Best Product Awards for 2022-2023. This is the 40th anniversary of the EISA Awards. And for anybody who's not familiar, EISA stands for Expert Imaging and Sound Association. As I understand it, the roots of this were back in the 80s, a bunch of publications that covered cameras got together to sort of decide like what was the best product and give them an award. And it's grown. It's now like a community of 60 technology magazines and websites from all around the world that specialize in hi-fi, home theater, photo, in-car, home electronics, mobile electronics, stuff like that. And
30 countries.
yeah, is it 30? Okay, cool.
30 countries, yeah.
And SoundStage is one of those publications, one of the 60. So, although SoundStage gets to vote, and by the way, we should say Brent nor I has any say in this. We don't know who from the publication votes. I guess Doug could tell us that. Maybe it's just Doug, but it's a secret ballot, so nobody at SoundStage can say, hey, we voted for this product. But a lot of the publications do cover, say, here are the awards, here are the products that won. And then on SoundStage now, on SoundStage Hi-Fi now, you can see the best products from the hi-fi category and the home theater audio category. So, Brent, what do you think about awards like this? What do you think the value is?
Not surprisingly, I have some opinions because I've worked for a zillion publications and a lot of them had awards. And in so many cases, I really actually like this because, it's a lot of people voting on it and, it's going to be, and, some of the people voting on it are not super heavy duty. Some of them are among the most heavy duty experts in the audio industry, some are not, but everybody gets an equal vote. But it is less. So many awards programs. I'll tell you from a publishing professional's experience, so many awards programs are just an excuse to give companies awards so that you can curry favor with them in some way.
Or it's a way to reward advertisers, basically.
Well, yeah, basically, yeah. So you can curry favor with your advertisers or play nice to people or whatever. I remember when I was at Video Magazine, we had the editor then at the time decided that I think we were just coming into 1990, and he decided that we should have 90 for the 90s. So we gave out 90 awards. And we were giving awards to whatever. We didn't review that much. I don't think we have reviewed 90 pieces of equipment that year. I can't, we did 4. Yeah, no, we had not. And so we were just giving awards to all kinds of random crap. And it was so funny because I was sitting in our meeting room and all the awards were, they came in, the boxes of them came in and we're going to give them away at some ceremony. And, my old mentor, Lance Braithwaite, he and I were, everyone's kind of look at the awards and everybody leaves the room except for me and Lance. And Lance kind of gets up with this sort of dramatic flourish. And he goes and kind of puts his hand to his chin like he's thinking really hard. And then he goes and pulls out of the 90, he pulls out about 6. And he says, there's the Lance Braithwaite Awards. And he sort of storms out of the room.
Nice.
So anyway, I'm saying that a lot of times awards don't mean as much as you think, but I think these do because there's no, it's a zillion publications. You can't combine a zillion publications and curry favor with advertisers. Right. And it's also not driven by personal relationships. It's, because there's just too many people involved in too many countries. So I think this is a really legit and interesting thing. It doesn't mean that these are the things I would necessarily pick, but that's good.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of one nice thing about it is, since we're just talking about how super high end this industry's gotten, there are a lot of products. I would say the vast majority of the products in here are affordable.
Yeah. Yeah. The Kef LS60 that we talked about so much in the last episode, that was a pick. That was their pick for best wireless floor standing loudspeaker. I don't know how many of them there are, but however many of them there are, it was ranked the best, across all of the publications that voted for it. So.
Yeah.
What stood out to you? What were some of your favorite products?
Well, I thought, one thing I want to point out here is, we're talking about affordable products, and they focused on one of the things that got an award was this Argon Audio TT4 turntable. And I'd never heard of Argon Audio before. However, reading the write-up that's here on SoundStage, and I believe these write-ups are generic to all of the participants, and all the participants have to post this thing and post this write-up. And so this is, as they say, a relatively young brand, and it has become one of the largest turntable manufacturers in Scandinavia. Now, I don't know how big of a distinction that is. I don't know how many turntable manufacturers there are in Scandinavia, but whatever. But this thing is really nice. It's a very nice turntable. It looks like it's very well made. It's $650 US. It's got a built-in phono preamp and comes with a good Ortofon 2M reg cartridge, and comes in like 4 different wood. It's just a really nice product at a very affordable price. And I think it's just really nice that they're focusing on stuff like this that's just not crazy, that average people can afford to go. You can go afford to buy the EISA Best Value Turntable 2022 to 2023.
Yeah. Hey, I want to say something real quick. Gordon Brockhouse, who did our review of the KEF LS60, emailed me and pointed out that when we were talking about being able to, sort of plug a turntable into those speakers, we forgot to mention the fact that you would need a preamp, a phono preamp. And I just realized maybe some of our listeners who aren't into vinyl or things like that might not understand why you need a phono preamp and why it's significant that this thing has a built-in phono preamp. So let's talk about that and what that means.
Okay, well, it's so with the signals coming off of a turntable, off of the turntable cartridge, are in order to get the best sound from a turntable, and from the whole system, the record and everything like that, they made decisions, way back, many decades ago, about how to do that. And one of the things they do is they reduce the amount of bass that goes onto the record, because if you had a lot of bass, your grooves would have to be really fat and you wouldn't be able to fit as much music on there.
Yeah.
And then they also boost the treble going onto the record, and then they cut it going back, which basically gives you sort of a really simple means of noise reduction.
Yeah. And there's like a reverse EQ curve in the preamp.
Right. Yeah. So the preamp has to have a reverse EQ curve. Otherwise, the record sounds really bad.
Right.
And so with this Argon Audio turntable, the preamp's built in, but you can go buy a preamp for anywhere from literally $15 to about $100,000.
Yeah.
Depending on what you want to spend. But you have to have one, and it can be built into the turntable. It can be separate. It could be built into the whatever device you have. And there are powered speakers that have a built-in phono pre. Not the KEFs.
Not the KEFs. So yeah, I just wanted to point out, if you've got the KEFs, you want to add a turntable, you need something like the Argon Audio TT4. So
yeah. So which of these products did you like, or that caught your eye?
I really like the System Audio Legend 7.2 Silverback speaker.
Never heard of them. Who are they?
I've never heard of them either, but I have heard of the technology built into them. So these, interestingly enough, this is a wireless version of a speaker that has apparently been pretty well reviewed from the company that was previously passive. So they've taken what was a popular passive on-wall speaker and added EISA wireless technology to it. A few years back, I would say, maybe three years ago or something like that, I reviewed a system from a company called Enclave, which was an entirely wireless 5.1 system. Basically, it's as easy to connect and set up as a soundbar, but it is a true 5.1 system with a dedicated center, left and right, surround, subwoofer, all wireless. You still have to plug them into power, but you're not stringing wires. And this System Audio Legend 7.2 Silverback is using the same wireless technology. So you have a little source device box that transmits wirelessly to these speakers, and you can buy them one at a time, 2, 3, 4, 5, what have you. But I just think it's really cool because I don't know why, but on-wall speakers are just a category that have never really taken off, but I think there's a lot of merit to them. And I also think it's really cool that they're taking this on-wall speaker and adding this EISA technology, which I think, look, a lot of people, and my dad is one of them. My dad ended up with all in-ceiling speakers for his media room system, which is, in my opinion, less than ideal. But he simply did not want speakers, cables running around the room, right? And, it's a valid concern. He cares more about that than he cares about, the audio perfection. I think these speakers probably address some of the concerns that a lot of people have about running wires. You just need a power outlet somewhere nearby them, but you could build a wireless on-wall speaker system, and I just think that kind of rocks.
I agree, and that's, that fits into a lot of decor, and I still don't think on-wall speakers can deliver as spacious a sound as freestanding speakers. However, they can come really close and they can deliver flat frequency response. And I think I've reviewed a ton of them because, that used to be a really big deal in their earlier, in the 90s, the double knots. When there were a lot of companies doing like on-wall speakers that were supposed to go with plasma TVs. Mm-hmm. And a lot of companies threw a lot of money at it, and you don't see that many of those anymore. But this one's only $1,000 a piece, by the way.
Yeah,
so
per speaker.
A little more than 1,000. And so that is, to me, a really cool thing that you can go buy these things. You don't have to think about decor. You just hang them on the wall and you plug them in. You're going to have cords coming down from them unless you're really a snazzy installer type person. And but you're going to have something that is a really decor friendly product that, I guess, if these guys voted for it, must sound pretty good. So.
Yeah, and if you've got the little wireless stereo hub, that adds AirPlay, that adds Bluetooth, Chromecast, Spotify Connect. So you could just, it's really easy to get music to these things. And in my opinion, although convenience is a really dirty word in our hobby for some reason, I think the easier you can make it for people to listen to an elevated listening experience, well, the more likely you're going to be able to get them to listen to an elevated listening experience. So, technologies like that just right at hand, to me, encourage better quality listening, which is, I think, cool. I think very cool. So
yeah. I mean, I really like, getting rid of some of the problems that you have with installation and getting other family members to think that thing is okay in the room. And these are like nice white speakers that look, you could just hang them on a wall and probably nobody would really notice them all that much.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention one more product in there that I think we're both pretty familiar with. And that is the SVS Prime Wireless Pro powered speakers.
Yeah.
And so SVS came out with their first, Prime powered speakers. What was it, 2-3 years ago?
And a little more than that. I have them. Those are actually the speakers that I mix this podcast on when I do it. I love these speakers so much. So I have the original. Yeah.
Anyway, so those came out, but a lot of people thought they didn't have enough bass. So SVS kind of re-engineered them a little bit and came up with a bassier version. And I'm sure they cost a little bit more because they're bigger. They're a little bit bigger. I don't know how much they cost.
Let me look real quick. We talked about them a few episodes ago. So the pros are
like $700, $800 a pair.
Yeah, $800 a pair.
Okay, so that's a really good, and they have a lot of the same features of the other streaming type speakers that we've been talking about, like the system audios and the KEFs and all that.
Yeah,
and they're just a plain old pair of bookshelf speakers, so there's no complicated installation or anything like that. You just basically set them on shelves or on stands or whatever you got, and you do all your configuration and your apps and stuff like that. But it's basically really very straightforward, very simple.
The only thing I did to my original Prime Wireless was plug a subwoofer into them, because they've got a subwoofer output. Yeah. When you do it, engages a crossover. So the criticisms about the original lacking bass were just if you use the stereo pair. If you add a subwoofer, they're full range and they sound amazing. So, but these new ones, you don't really need a sub. You got deeper bass. So
yeah. Really Anything else you want to talk about with the EISA Awards in particular?
I thought one thing that I thought was cool is this little Sonus Faber Omnia won an award for all-in-one loudspeaker. So we've talked before about sort of all-in-one systems, and I contrasted the KEF LF60 with things that have sort of a desktop form factor. Well, the Sonus Faber Omnia is one of those. It's sort of a desktop system. This is the one that you would put on your desktop, or even maybe on your, bedroom credenza or something like that. But it's just a really cool all-in-one streaming speaker. I think you could hook your TV to it and it functions kind of like a sound bar, but maybe better. Yeah. It's got Rune connectivity. It does Tidal Connect, Spotify Connect. I think one of the coolest things about it, one of the reasons I'm drawn to it, if I'm going to be honest with you, is it's just gorgeous. Like
it is
this
really
thing looks
pretty.
like a piece of sculpture. So
yeah, as we kind of expect from Sonus Faber, and it's $2,000, so it is not crazily priced.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cheap. I mean, it's one of the most expensive all-in-one wireless speakers I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, you're really getting something that is really extraordinary from so many different standpoints. Not only, I mean, I assume it sounds good. These guys voted for it. Sonus Faber makes pretty good stuff, but it's just such a. Honestly, it's kind of nice to buy something and have it be a conversation piece a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, you buy this thing and you put it in your living room and people are going to be like, wow, the thing is cool. And you play music on it. And maybe, I assume it sounds good. And, probably you're going to take a lot of pride in showing this thing off. And it's got a real wood top on it too, or wood veneer, plywood top. It looks just gorgeous.
And it's got HDMI ARC.
Yeah. So you can use it as a soundbar.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, this would be nice. This is actually something that, like, I mean, normally I just say I've been doing audio for so long, and normally I say the best way manufacturers can bribe me is to put a FedEx or UPS return label in the box with the product. So I can get rid of it as fast as I can, because my house is full of this stuff. I've got at least a dozen USB interfaces I'm evaluating right now, and then I go on to speakerphones, and I go into, I don't know how many soundbars I have, but this thing, like, if I would actually I was looking at it. There was a Sweetwater thing, Sweetwater, the pro audio dealer, of register to get $10,000 worth of free gear, and I kind of looked at it and like, I don't want all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing, like, I would be like, oh yeah, I want that thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
if they forgot to send me a return label for this one, I would not be mad. And
I
haven't heard it, but I've talked to people who have heard it, and they say it actually sounds really darn good. So
yeah, I think Doug Schneider from our leader at SoundStage heard it and thought it was really impressive, and did a pretty lengthy write-up about it somewhere or another.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about from these awards, man?
No.
We will have links in the show notes, by the way, to SoundStage's coverage of this, and also we are going to link to Darko Audio's YouTube post about this, because John Darko did a really cool job in video form of sort of explaining some of the background politics of the voting, how it's changed in recent years and over the years, and his philosophy on it. So we're going to also link to that. But we'll have a link to both our coverage if you want to read print, John's if you want to watch a video. But anything else?
No, that's all. Let's get out of this thing.
All right, man. Well, we got to do some credits first.
We do. You are listening to the SoundStage Audiophile podcast with Brent Butterworth and
Dennis Berger.
Yes, and we are a presentation of the SoundStage Network, which is a collection of 9 microsites dealing with all sorts of different kinds of audio.
Yeah, we should say this is what is it? What did we decide? Is a Butterburger production?
Yeah, Butterburger Productions.
That means one of us mixed it and mastered it and everything. So we're not going to tell who. Music. Who did the music, man?
The music is always some kind of stuff, usually some kind of stuff by me. And fingers crossed, I will draft my good friend Dan Gonda to play some flute or piccolo for me on one of the tunes. So if you hear flute or piccolo, it's almost certainly Dan.
Oh, cool.
If you don't hear flute or piccolo, then I couldn't talk Dan into do it in time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's it. And we'll see everybody in a few weeks.
Cool. Bye, everybody.
Bye.